Hello everyone, this is Jenna Nelson. Today I'll be talking to you about PFAS in Maine and some data that I've mapped for you to look at. I want to start out with a question. What's in our milk? This is a question that was on Mainers' minds when they learned of some testing done by the Department of Agriculture. The DAC tested milk from across the state for para- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as forever chemicals, due to their inability to break down. Some of them have been linked to cancer, liver damage, and other health problems. Overall, most of the milk tested fine, but a few concerning samples were traced back to particular farms. Further investigation into PFAS led to the realization that these chemicals were also in the soil and the water and potentially other things. So, how have PFAS substances entered the natural environment? PFAS compounds are produced for numerous household products. They've been used in nonstick cookware, flame-retardant materials, and grease-resistant paper, such as for fast food wraps and microwave popcorn bags. The flame-retardant materials often enter the environment in military training zones. The paper products take a different route. Paper has been one of Maine's largest manufacturing industries. Unfortunately, it's also been a major source of pollution. Starting in the 1970s, industrial byproduct sludge application permits were granted to hundreds of sites across Maine. Paper mill sludge was used as a fertilizer. And this might not have been a problem, except that when PFAS chemicals were present in that paper sludge, they entered the soil that was used for growing and producing various crops. It's now known that PFAS chemicals resist conventional wastewater treatment, build up in the environment, and have adverse effects on human and animal health. So how widespread was this problem? Well, here in this map we can look at the data for historical sludge and septage application sites and the possible correlation to high levels of PFAS in soil. So here you can see individual sites that had a permit. Often they were granted 5 years at a time to spread over various amounts of acres. And over here we have some recent testing which has confirmed PFAS in the soil. All of these test results, whose locations have been dispersed to make it easier to see all the results, have varying levels of PFAS. So this shows their concentration in parts per trillion, with the yellow being 40, and then we have some much higher levels in the darker purple. You can see a possible correlation between this cluster of sites. If we zoom out, you can see just how widespread the sludge application permits were, and some of the different areas that have tested positive. Where else have PFAS chemicals been found? Unfortunately, it doesn't just stay in the soil. These substances travel into groundwater, vegetation, and then into animals and humans that consume those animals. Testing has grown over the last few years, but there's still a lot of locations and different materials that haven't been tested. Let's look at a few specific areas. PFAS have been detected in public drinking water and private wells in highly contaminated areas, such as Fairfield. Results from testing across the state show mostly 0 to very low concentration levels. However, there's not been extensive water testing for PFAS. On this map, you can see the areas that have been tested. There's also some disagreement about where the health guideline should be. The EWG says 1 part per trillion. Most of these are school department, water systems, and occasionally mobile home parks and city supplies. Another topic that's been in the news a lot in Maine lately is the discovery of PFAS in white-tailed deer meat. Test revealed that various parts of the deer contained PFAS, and Mainers were urged to not consume deer that had been obtained within a 5-mile radius of contaminated sites in Fairfield. If we were to take this warning a step further and apply that 5-mile radius to sites where samples have tested high for PFAS, we'd have a considerable area of Maine that would be a no-hunt zone. Now, this is more of a visual experiment and shouldn't be taken as absolute science. There needs to be a lot more testing to know exactly where we should be concerned about. Finally, we'll look at one more animal that's been affected by PFAS. Fish in Maine rivers have been contaminated with PFAS, which is a subgroup. The Maine Remedial Action Guidelines threshold for PFAS is 52,000 parts per trillion, which is denoted here with the red fish. So we can see that it depends greatly on the water system and the area, whether or not the fish are contaminated. Some fish were perfectly fine, and then other fish were definitely above the threshold. Again, these particular rivers tend to have warnings about how many fish someone should consume annually from those areas. One area of interest is up in Aroostook County, where the wildlife refuge here has been severely contaminated, possibly from an industrial complex nearby. So what can be done? Water treatment systems are being installed in contaminated areas where the drinking supply is contaminated. These filters help reduce the amount of PFAS, but they don't completely eliminate it. You can see here that the samples that had a very high concentration are in dark red, and that over here after the filter, we don't have as many samples testing that high. Again, this is Fairfield. Much more testing is needed to know the full extent of the problem. If we look here, we can see all of the sludge and septage sites, and each of the areas that has been tested for soil or groundwater is marked with the purple pin. So you can see that some areas have never been tested. Fortunately, a Maine law was passed last summer, which will require all of these sites to be tested. After that, we should have a more accurate picture of the extent of the problem. Here are my sources, and thank you for watching.